Hello there, my name's Simon Prickett. I am the Developer Relations Lead here at CrateDB, and welcome along to today's webinar. I'm just going to get the slides going, but this is a live event. So if you are out there and listening right now on YouTube or LinkedIn are the two places that you can find us, then please do drop us a comment and let us know that you are there and maybe where you're from. And we can also put comments and things up on the big screen here. So we can do things like, this is me. And we've got, Stu says hello from YouTube. So hello from YouTube. And if you've got any questions during this session, then please feel free to ask those. And we've also got somebody out there in LinkedIn land. Hello to you. If you can, if you want to ask us questions, go ahead and do that. I will probably show you a question in a banner like that down the bottom, and then, if possible, attempt to answer it on the stream. Otherwise, we'll do it afterwards. So today's session is called From Data to Insights, and we're going to look at a new feature in CrateDB's cloud product. We're going to look at how we can stream data from MongoDB into CrateDB. And we're going to look at how that works, but also why you might want to do it, and take a quick tour of this feature and have a demo of how it works. So let's just dive in. So moving along, as I said, I'm Simon Prickett. I work in developer relations here at CrateDB. If you have any questions about the product or anything you see on this stream, you can ask me, and good way of doing that is join our online community. So you can go to community.cratedb.com. We have a discourse there, and you can join us, ask your questions, and myself and other staff members will be able to answer them for you. So in today's session, we are going to, there we go. Today's session, we are going to look at, as I said, taking some data from MongoDB. And we're going to use the cloud instance of MongoDB. And we're going to move that data or replicate it. We're not actually going to move it. It's going to stay in MongoDB where it was. We're going to replicate it into CrateDB. And once we've done that, we are then going to show how we can do something with it. And one of the things we'll demonstrate with that is how we can build a Grafana database. So imagine we've got a situation where we're using MongoDB for some sort of operational solution. We've got production data in there. We want to do maybe complicated analytics with that. We want to combine it with other data. We don't want to do that necessarily in the production database. So we're going to use CDC to replicate that into CrateDB. And from there, we're going to be able to use standard tools that work through SQL integrations, such as Grafana, to visualize that. So let's keep going and see what we have here. For those of you who are not familiar with CrateDB, this is quite a complicated diagram that sort of covers everything. You don't need to know all about this for today's session. What we can take from this is that CrateDB is an analytics database, or it's a database that specializes in analytics and real time. It organizes data into tables, and it supports all sorts of different data types. So we're going to look at a couple today, but some that we are not going to see in this session would be, for example, geospatial or full text search or vector. Those data types can sit alongside in the same table as numerical data that might form a time series, or JSON document data, which we will see today because we're working with MongoDB, and all sorts of other things. So CrateDB is available on the edge, on-premise, and in the cloud. We're going to look at a feature of the cloud product today, which is an integration with Mongo. And we're going to do that. Let's sort of cut a path through this diagram. So we're going to start with some enterprise data or production data that we've got in a MongoDB system. We're going to want to load that. We're not really doing a batch load here. So CDC that we're looking at is a continuous streaming process. So it's like real-time updates. But we're going to perform essentially a loading process that's ongoing to get data into CrateDB. Once it's in there, we're going to store it in a table, and we're going to store it as JSON objects. because data in MongoDB generally looks like that. We're going to take advantage of a couple of features of CrateDB here. So there's a dynamic schema. You can define as much schema as you need. So we're just going to say we want to store all of our data in an object column inside a table. And then what goes inside that table or inside that object is basically anything. So whatever the structure is in MongoDB will be replicated into CrateDB. And the way CrateDB works is it indexes everything by default. So you want that in an analytics database because you don't know what sorts of queries people are going to run against it. So you want everything to be quick and hit indexes. So by default, CrateDB will index everything. So we're not going to see any index building in CrateDB. There's no need for that. Then what we're going to do is do some basic analytics. We'll run some queries and also some visualization. We'll have a Grafana dashboard. And what we'll do with that is we will show as data moves from Mongo and we change the state of the data in Mongo, that state is replicated into CrateDB through the streaming CDC process, and then onwards into the Grafana dashboard that's querying the database. One thing to pay attention to, if you're not familiar with CrateDB, is that bar down the side. So the native SQL bar that goes across everything basically says that everything we do in CrateDB is SQL. So we have queries would all be in SQL. Inserting data can be done through SQL, DDL operations, changing tables, creating tables, etc., all SQL. So something that you're fairly familiar with. So this is what we're going to look at today. This is another view of just that. So we at CrateDB have integrated our cloud product and built a UI for connecting to Mongo's CDC. CDC is a process that we'll look at what that means in a minute. But essentially, that means we get real-time streaming of data and changes to that data from a Mongo instance into a CrateDB instance. So we can keep the operational data and the operational workloads in Mongo and perform sort of ad hoc analytics, build dashboards, etc., and use SQL tools on a copy of that data in CrateDB Cloud. So what does change data capture actually mean? Let's take a moment to have some tea. It's basically a method for tracking and streaming real-time changes from a database. So in this case, our from database is going to be Mongo. It includes all the things you would expect. So if we insert new data into the source database or update existing or delete existing, you will see that those changes are replicated through to databases that are following along through the CDC process. In Mongo, the CDC sort of implementation detail inside MongoDB, it uses what's called the op log, which is a special capped collection inside Mongo. So there's a couple of things we have to do to enable access to that from another database, and we'll come to that when we look at configuring the connection. Then once you've set this up, changes in the source database are captured and they're propagated to other systems. So CrateDB Cloud will be one of those. You might have other things listening to this special cap collection, and they would also get that data for other purposes, whatever they're going to do with it. So obviously those things can include CrateDB Cloud now. So this is what we'll be demonstrating. And why might you want to do that? What's the point of, if you've got data in one database, what's the point of streaming it into another one? Well, if you want to move it into CrateDB, there's really 4 things that you might be doing that for. So the first one will be because you want to get some sort of real-time analytics. So Mongo is built for fast document-based transactions. It's not really optimized for high-performance analytics. CrateDB has a distributed SQL engine, which lets you execute large-scale joins on data, aggregations, and efficient analytics. It's designed for this purpose. So offloading this sort of work to an analytics database allows you to get real-time insights where You want to keep your data in Mongo, but you don't want to slow down that production environment. The second thing might be you want to work with standard BI tools. So many BI tools require SQL compatibility. If you're continuously streaming your MongoDB data into CrateDB, you can use these tools to generate real-time reports and dashboards. And we'll see how to do that with Grafana. Again, you might want to build operational dashboards. So you might connect tools such as Grafana or your own internal dashboarding libraries. And these tools can sort of place heavy load on databases. So you want to keep that against the analytics database, not against the production one. Finally, you might want to set up a sort of hybrid transactional analytical processing environment. And this is really sort of a roll-up of or a consequence of the other three. You probably want to offload analytical queries from databases such as Mongo whilst maintaining high performance analytics elsewhere. So CrateDB is designed for that. And you end up with a system where you might combine the operational strength of Mongo with CrateDB's cloud analytics. So you keep the performance in the production system and allow analysts and other things, maybe it's AI models or whatever, to hit another database very hard in a way that it's designed for. So I've got a couple of demos that we're going to look at here. We've got two things. One which is going to show essentially pulling data through from Mongo to CrateDB. I wanted this to be something that you can replicate yourselves very easily. So I've used MongoDB sample data. When you set up a new MongoDB Atlas in the cloud, one of the things that you can do is import various data sets that are designed for training courses, exploration, something to use when you're following through the docs. So one of those is Mflix, which I guess is like MongoFlix, sort of like Netflix, a movies platform. And it has a bunch of different collections about movies and theaters and users and so on. So what we're going to do is I've imported that into my MongoDB database when I created it. We're going to demonstrate how to replicate data through CDC across to CrateDB and look at some queries on it. And then we're going to do a second demo, which shows the sort of continuous streaming nature of it. So this one here with the movies, I'm really just going to pull the data in once. And it's pretty static. You know, we don't have an application that's changing or manipulating this movie data. Over here, what I wanted to do was have a sort of smaller scope demo that shows these changes so you can see them happening and reflected in the dashboard. So for example, here we've got a Python program. It's going to generate JSON documents. And these documents are, imagine you're a hotel front desk. You have guests calling you, or they might be accessing an app or using the terminal on the TV in their rooms, and they're requesting different things from you. So they might request things like, we want room service, we'd like the room to be cleaned, or can you bring us some extra towels, or can you call us a cab to somewhere? So I've got a bit of Python that is going to generate these events at fairly random times and store them in MongoDB. Then what we're going to do is store them in MongoDB as a collection. So that's our sort of production system where this work happens. Then we're going to use CDC to replicate this data across to CrateDB, where we can use it for analytical purposes without affecting what's going on in Mongo. So from CrateDB, we're then going to have a very, very simple Grafana dashboard. This is really simple to build because CrateDB, I said we do everything in SQL. CrateDB also talks Postgres wire protocol, so we can connect to Grafana. Grafana thinks it's a Postgres database, and we can run some SQL queries and get a dashboard that just shows us generally the state of the system. Then we have a little bit more Python. What's that going to do? Well, it's going to, if you look at that job down the bottom left there, it's going to update that periodically with a couple more fields. So it's going to say who completed the job. So a staff member, in this case, staff number 3 completed the job. And it's going to say when was that completed. So it's going to add another timestamp for that. Those changes will also be replicated down to CrateDB via CDC. And what you'll see then is that the data in CrateDB updates and the dashboard also updates. So that's kind of enough theory. I'm just going to really quickly check that we are good. Yeah, we don't have any comments. If you have any questions about this, again, please feel free to go and ask those, and I'll try and deal with them. And also, we've got a blog that covers this. So if you want to read more about this, we've got a blog entry that covers how CDC works, and we're publishing more information about that in the near future. So keep your eye on the blog. So I'm going to switch away from slides for a minute. That's kind of enough theory. And what we're going to do is go over to Chrome here. And let's see if we can make a few things a little bit bigger. So I've got a couple of things going on here. Let me first sort of introduce what we've got. So here I've got a MongoDB trial cluster. There's nothing special about this. I just signed up and created it. I have loaded, as I said earlier, the sample Netflix or Mflix data in there. And if we look at this, we've got a collection called movies. And inside the movies, we've got objects or documents that represent individual movies. You know, these have different structure to them. There's an array here. There's another array here. I think there might be some sub-objects. Yeah, here inside IMDb, there's a sub-object with a rating. There's a Rotten Tomatoes object that has another object inside it. So it's kind of a nested structure going on here. And what you'll see happen is what we're going to do is take a CrateDB database that doesn't know anything about this collection, use the CDC process, replicate things across to that CrateDB database, and sort of look at what we get as a result. So this is my Mongo setup. Over here, I've got a CrateDB cluster. I created this one in the cloud. Again, there's nothing particularly special about this. I just created a fresh cluster in the cloud. It was completely empty when I created it. And it's got a little bit of sample data in there that relates to the second demo right now, but nothing relating to the first. So let's sort of look at this. I've got a doc schema in here. If I refresh this in here, I've got a movies table. So let's get rid of that. Let's drop table movies. Okay. And then let us see what we've got going on here. Okay. So here in the import section is where we can see jobs that I've got going that are currently importing data from that MongoDB cluster. There is one set up there already. We'll come to that with the second demo. But what I wanted to do first was go to the creation of a new CDC job. So what we're going to do first is click, let me just do this, click here, create integration. And as we can see, we've got MongoDB as a source here. And I can either choose an existing MongoDB cluster connection or create a new one. Let's just look at create a new one for the minute. So if I choose to create a new one, there's a couple of different authentication methods that I can connect to Mongo with. I've used the Scram connection, so username and password. What we do need to do as well is when we set up a Mongo Atlas project, network access is restricted to certain IP addresses. I think it's just the one that you set up from to start with. So we need to add some more IP addresses to this because CrateDB Cloud runs on various IP addresses. And these IP addresses will actually change depending on where you provision your CrateDB Cloud. I think mine's in Azure, but if you picked AWS or Google Cloud, you would get different IP addresses. And what we need to do is tell Mongo to allow access from these. So if we've got a connection string and a username and a password for Mongo, and we've set this up, then we can go ahead and fill this form out. Over here on the Mongo side, what does this look like? Well, down here in database access, I've got a user here called CDC user that we've set up for this purpose. It's got a role of read any database, so it can read any database in the cluster, but I've also given it this role of CDC reader that I created. And if we look in custom roles here, you'll see that CDC reader has this permission called change stream. So this is what we need for the change data capture. We need to be able to monitor the change stream in Mongo. So the user that we're connecting as in CrateDB Cloud, when it talks to Mongo, needs to have this permission. So that's all set up. I've set it up against the collections that I'm going to work with, so the mflix one and the jobs one for the next demo. And then under here, you can see I've also added those IP addresses, and indeed I am running in Azure Western Europe. So Mongo's cloud will allow the CrateDB Cloud to talk to it. So that's kind of the setup over here. We'll not mess around with putting passwords and all of that stuff in. I'll just use the existing connection that I built before, which has all of the values for that cluster in it. So what we'll do is do next and then say, what do we want to replicate via CDC? So the database in Mongo is sample mflix, and the collection is called movies. Then we have to tell it, well, where do you want to put that in CrateDB? So as it's pulling things into CrateDB, where do you want to put it? We'll create a table in CrateDB called movies. And over here, what we're basically saying is we're taking BSON document and we are mapping that into a column in a table in CrateDB. So this new movies table. And then here we can choose between a couple of things. So I'm going to say I want object dynamic. What does that mean? Well, in CrateDB, that means that the object can have any schema. We'll just infer the schema from the shape of the objects coming in. And also that everything inside that object we want to be indexed. So if I picked object ignored, we would essentially not index some of the structure in there. I want the opposite of that. I want everything indexed so my queries are fast. Then when I hit next, we just need to give this integration a name. So we'll call it movies CDC Mongo. And then we have to tell it what we want it to do. So here we can say, well, okay, what I want you to do is load everything that's in the collection in Crate into CrateDB. So essentially replicate the whole collection and then do CDC, so track changes. Or we can say, I want it to just load the stuff into CrateDB and then stop tracking changes, or only track the changes and don't do an initial backload. So for this purpose, we'll do all of it and create an integration. You can see it's off and running there. And what should happen is in a second or so, we should have all of that data inside CrateDB. So it should have pulled it from the Mongo collection. Here we go, 69% done. And then once it's done that initial import of, there we are, 21,000 documents, it will start tracking changes. There aren't going to be any changes in this part of the demo with the movie data because we don't have an application that's changing the data, but we'll show that with the jobs demo shortly. Right, so back to my console here. If I then refresh this, last command I ran got rid of an old version of that table. So I've now got a movies table, and what's in my movies table, let's just see if we can make that a little bit more readable. What's in my movies table, we've got an ID column, a document column and an underscore malformed, which is where anything that didn't successfully go through the CDC process will end up. However, we saw it was 100% successful, so there'll be nothing there. So if I then do select star from movies, limit 10, just get 10 movies, we can see what's going on in this table. Let's try and adjust for that. Right. So we've got an ID for each document. That's the ID from MongoDB. We've got a document here that is essentially the JSON document that was in Mongo. So we've retained things like this directors array, and we've retained somewhere down here, there's an IMDb object with sub values, and then somewhere else there should be the that one might not have the tomatoes object. Let's see if this one does. Ones with tomatoes objects will have that object with the sub object in it. So you can see here we've essentially replicated the whole structure from MongoDB into CrateDB now. And I'm going to make this a little smaller again because it's a bit of a battle between showing things and font size. So now we've got all of that up and working. What can we do with it? Well, we could run all sorts of SQL queries. We could combine it with other tables or other collections of data in CrateDB. CrateDB also supports a foreign data wrapper, so we could make queries to include data in other Postgres databases elsewhere. But just for sort of simple demonstration, we can run some queries. So I've got one here that is basically going to find the top 10 highest rated movies from 2014, according to Rotten Tomatoes. So you can see here, I'm navigating that Rotten Tomatoes object that was in the source data. It's got a sub object called viewer and then a field called rating. And if I run this, you'll see we get, Rosemary's Baby is joint top with a whole load of other movies. So what we're doing here is now we've got a way of writing standard SQL queries against this data. We've got a method of receiving the data from MongoDB automatically and streaming changes to it, which I'll demonstrate with the second demo in a moment. And we can run aggregations and analytics queries on this. So that includes, for example, data that's in arrays or, in this case, objects. So I can pull this query up here that finds all the movies that this actor is in. And we're basically saying because actors is, cast is an array, we're basically saying, oh, find them in that array. So here again, SQL query, here are the movies that that actor's in, and here in cast members, we can see the other cast members that were in that movie. So that's our sort of movies example that is very easy for you to replicate yourself with Mongo's sample data. What I wanted to do was spend the remaining 10 minutes or so that we've got just looking at a more dynamic example where we've got smaller documents, but we can see changes in them. So let's just go back to the slide here again and just run through what that was. So remember, we're a hotel, we're doing room service jobs. We're going to have a Python script that puts those into MongoDB. There we go. We're going to replicate those to CrateDB through CDC process. And then we're going to have a dashboard that updates in real time when jobs are done. So hopefully we'll see a backlog of jobs build up, and then some jobs get completed. A little bit of a league table there of which staff members completed which job and what outstanding jobs there are to do. So let's go back to MongoDB Compass here. And Compass is another tool for looking at your MongoDB cluster if you're not familiar with that. So I'm also connected to that same cluster. And in there, I've got a database called sample jobs. And let's see if we can make that a little bit more streaming friendly. And inside sample jobs, we've got a collection called jobs, and there currently isn't anything there. So that's the Mongo side of things. If we swap to the CrateDB side of things, how do we get stuff into CrateDB here? Let's first off select star from jobs. So I've had this running before. I've got this table up and running. We've got a similar table to what we had for the movies. All the data from Mongo is going to arrive here in the document column. If there are anything that doesn't work, it's going to end up in malformed or error, but that's not going to happen here. And what we're going to do is basically watch changes or jobs get created in Mongo, changes get replicated to CrateDB, and then onwards to a Grafana dashboard. So the third step of this is Grafana here. Again, this is just Grafana Cloud. I've got a dashboard here that, as you can see, doesn't show anything at the moment because there's nothing in CrateDB. And how does this work? If we edit one of these widgets, you'll see down here, there's a SQL query. So Grafana is connected to what it thinks is a Postgres instance because CrateDB talks Postgres wire protocol. And we're just running SQL queries in here that generate output, and then Grafana is visualizing that output for us. So if we go back to here, there's nothing here. It's hitting the database every few seconds. There's nothing here either because we haven't put anything in there yet. And how have we connected these two together? So when anything appears in Mongo or gets changed, it's going to get changed data capture replicated across to CrateDB. So over here in my import tab, this is the movies one that we had going before. We can see some information about this. So as you can see, it replicated 21,349 documents. It's not done anything since because nothing's changed. And this one over here is also running. It's just running on a different database and a different collection. So let's look at what's going on here. You can see it's done some in the past from where I was running this earlier. And it's done 13 inserts in the past 24 hours. So 13 new jobs were created when I was playing with this. 5 were updated and then 14 were deleted. So all of those changes got replicated through to CrateDB. So our connection here is set up and running. We can also pause this if we wanted to stop this for a little while for some reason, or delete it if we don't need it anymore. So back to here again, nothing in CrateDB. Let's go to Compass. Nothing inside here. So what we really need to do is generate some jobs. So I've written a little bit of code, and we can see that here. And the code's not really the aim of this stream. Unusually for a developer relations one, we're not doing much coding today. But essentially, this code knows nothing about CrateDB. It's operational production code that's been written to talk to MongoDB. So it uses Mongo's Mongo client. And what it essentially does is it picks a random one of these types of jobs every so many seconds. And it picks a random room number in the hotel and adds that with the current timestamp and does essentially a collection insert one into Mongo here. So this is going to create a job in Mongo, and then it's going to go to sleep for a little while and wake up again and just create another random job and keep going. So what I'll do is we'll run that. Let's pull up a terminal here and do. So I'm going to run that, and let's make it a little bit bigger so you can see what's going on. And you see it's created a job. Here's the job ID. It's gone to sleep, but it created a job of do some cleaning in room 400. So over here in CrateDB, we've now got an object cleaning room 400, the timestamp it was requested at, etc. And as you'd expect, we've got that because if we do an update on this query here, you'll see we've got jobs that have started to be created. So we've already created 3 or 4. Our code here is off doing that. I'm going to stop that for a minute so it doesn't create a runaway amount of jobs. Let's see what we've got. We've got 5 here in MongoDB. We've got 5 here in CrateDB now. And then if we go over to Grafana here, you'll see we've got 5 outstanding jobs. So our whole process is working here from a create perspective. We're creating new records or new documents in Mongo. Those are getting CDC replicated across to new records in CrateDB, and then Grafana is able to query them. So what happens if somebody actually starts doing these jobs? Let's leave the dashboard up for a minute and let's run a second script here. Should probably show you what that does first, but here we go. So our second script here, again, is pure MongoDB code. It doesn't do anything with CrateDB. So what it's doing is connecting to the same Mongo collection. It's finding here we go. It's finding essentially the most recent job that doesn't have a completed at field in that collection. And then it is waiting a random amount of time, so pretending to do that job. It's sending staff up to get towels or whatever, and then it's updating the document in Mongo with a completed at timestamp and a staff ID, somebody who completed it, and that's a number. So what you'll see when we run this is periodically a staff ID will complete a job. So let's just run this. And there are jobs that need doing. So it's found that room 400 cleaning, the oldest one in the queue, if you like. It's currently doing the job, and it takes a number of seconds to do that, not the real number of seconds it would take, because that would make for a really dull demo. There we go. It's finished one. So somebody called staff ID 5 has completed that job. And then if we go over to Grafana here, it's already updated. So we've got 4 outstanding and 1 completed. We can see what types of outstanding job are. And then over here, we can see who completed that job. This data is not actually in Mongo. So the staff ID numbers were in Mongo. But if we go through to CrateDB here, we can, again, do this. And you'll see this one here was completed by 5. We have another table in here that I just created. It's a table that exists as standing analytical data called staff, and it has the IDs and the names of all of our staff. So over here, you can see staff number 1 is myself, and then there's some other folks that I work with. My colleagues are also staff members in here. So how does that work? Well, CrateDB, we can do joins on tables. We're essentially doing a join between the jobs table, the stuff that we got replicated from Mongo, and another table of standing data to get something friendlier for a dashboard, so the staff names. And what we'll see is, as this goes on, we've nearly burned down the outstanding jobs, so we've got 1 left to do. So it's probably time to also start this script again and actually create some jobs. And what we'll see is, this is CDC working essentially. One thing is creating jobs, putting documents into the collection. Another thing is updating them. And then we've got this analytics function here in Grafana, and we can run SQL queries in CrateDB against this that are not putting any load on MongoDB and aren't affecting production database at all. And there's no code that knows about CrateDB inside the system. It's just a CDC replication from Mongo that was configured between CrateDB Cloud and MongoDB Atlas. So we've got our hotel people. They're often running jobs now. And hopefully, eventually, they'll catch up with it. We could add more to them, and we've got a sort of classic queuing problem then. but that's not really the point of this. What I wanted to show here was that, and if we go back to the console and look at our import integrations, and now we look at the stats for jobs, you'll see we've done more inserts, we've done more updates. We haven't deleted any more documents because I didn't delete anything out of Mongo. But if I were to go into Compass and delete something, so let's pick this oldest job and say, okay, that's really done now, and that's deleted. Then that job will go through the CDC process, and it will get marked as deleted and deleted from CrateDB as well. So if we do that, it's not there yet, but we'll get another delete in the stats when it updates the stats. So that was everything that I was going to show you today about Mongo CDC. So if you're interested in this, then come check it out. It's available as a public preview right now in CrateDB Cloud, so anyone can get it. If you want to look at how to set it up yourself, if you need a step by step for that, it's in our documentation. And again, I would encourage you to go to our blog to read the blog post about this feature, how it works, and how to set it up. And if you're interested in learning more about CrateDB, then I kind of always end with this because I'm developer relations. I'm here to get people into the product and using it. We have the CrateDB Academy, which is a free online resource. You can sign up, take a course. We have a couple of courses right now. The fundamentals course is a great overview of the entire product. And then we have a course that focuses more on time series data. And if you take these courses, they're all online. You can use a cloud database with real data sets to learn about the product. And if you take our exam, which is a series of multiple choice questions where you're allowed to refer to the documentation and the internet and the course materials, then you can earn a certificate of completion that you can put on as a LinkedIn credential and share with your friends. So hopefully you found this fun and interesting. I'm Simon Prickett. If you want to catch up with me, then I'm fairly easily Googleable, but also join our online community, ask questions here, and we hope to see you on a course or using CrateDB soon. Okay, I think that's it for today's session. Just check we don't have any outstanding comments. Nope. So great. And if you're not watching this live and it's on YouTube, again, grab hold of me in the community, or you can also leave a comment on the YouTube video and we'll get back to you. Okay, have a great rest of your day, folks. Bye-bye.